Hey allies, Fortnite is running superbly well on the ROG Ally. However, it's not quite as good as we had hoped, as it definitely is struggling somewhat when it's running at 1080p. 720 is definitely the sweet spot here, and as you want that higher FPS, then 720 is probably going to be the way that you're playing, unless you're not that fussed about winning most of your games and you want a bit better graphical fidelity, in which case 1080p is where you want to be. You can see from this initial gameplay, this is 1080p and we are struggling to hold 60 frames per second out in the open world. And there is another weird bug with Fortnite that in the main menu and before the match begins, you do see all of the controller layout. But as soon as the game starts, it seems to switch to the prompts for keyboard and mouse. No matter what amount of fiddling you do with the controller layouts, it seems to be stuck that way for now. So hopefully that bug gets resolved soon. So let's have a look at the performance on 720 mode. And for these tests, I was running 120 Hz at 720. In-game settings for Fortnite, we were running the medium preset, and also DirectX 12. I actually got better results with DirectX 12 and the TSR settings on high than I did in DirectX 11. So medium preset for DirectX 12, 120 FPS rate limit at 720, TSR on high, and quality on the temporal super resolution. And in the performance mode, even at 720, we do still get some issues. You can see a slight degradation in the quality from 1080. But when we dive out of the battle bus, you will notice that we do still get those frames per second dips, and it can't hold 60 most of the time. This is a shame, but fortunately we have our turbo mode. This will drain your battery somewhat and give you only around an hour and a half playtime unless you're near power. But by turning on the turbo mode, even on battery, at 720 and the 120 Hz, we stick above the 60 frames per second mark and even bounce into the 100 FPS on a regular occasion. So this is definitely the way that you want to be playing Fortnite on the Ally. Over 60 frames per second will give you an advantage in most situations, and it just feels so good. And with a variable refresh rate of the Ally screen, it just looks absolutely phenomenal and extremely smooth as well. Of course, if we plug in and get that magical 30 watts, then we are able to push that 1080 a little bit more, but there does seem to be some other issues. Now on the left of your screen here is running this on the SD card, and on the right on the internal SSD. At 1080 I got some major load time issues and lockups on the SD card version, although I did still get a couple of lockups on the SSD version. Not enough for it to completely quit out of the game, but it did certainly make me worried. But this did only happen the once on the SSD side, where you can see on the deployment that it froze up somewhat. Whereas on the SD card I had several lockup situations, and the loading times going into the battle bus and into some of the other areas were really jarring. So if you are going to play Fortnite on the Ally, I would recommend making sure this is installed on your internal SSD, as installing on SD card did cause me a few issues. We come full screen though on the turbo 30 watt mode at 1080p. We can still see that we are struggling to hit that 60 mark. I'm sure if you drop this down to low, you could probably get some better frames, keeping that at over 60. But I just don't like the look of low settings on Fortnite. It just makes me not want to play. So I would rather have the visual fidelity here at 1080 and be close to 60. Or as before, drop that down into the 720 mode, 30 watt turbo mode. It'll push that FPS up into the 90 to 100 range all of the time. Unfortunately, there is still an issue with the latest BIOS where the 30 watt turbo mode is not quite as powerful as it should be. So this will only get better as they fix that as well. Let us know if you've been playing Fortnite on the Ally. It's certainly a much better way to play than any of the other handhelds so far. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.